Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Integrity, your partner for life. Integrity recently launched an exclusive research paper to help advisors understand how to attract and retain new clients. They believe their role in the industry is bigger than just providing products. They want to help create a sustainable industry, educate clients, and support advisors personally in their business. You can get a copy of the report and learn more about Integrity if you visit integritylife.com.au/XY.
Welcome back to the XY Advisor Podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and we are talking about an interesting startup that works with, well, sort of not so startup anymore, I shouldn't say, but it works with that planners in helping their clients who are approaching the retirement stage. And I welcome Natalie Yan-Chatonsky, a startup entrepreneur who is working with planners. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much for having me, Fraser.
No, you're very welcome. Now, do you want to give, I think I probably did your business no justice at all with my introduction. So do you want to give us a quick overview of your business?
Full-Time Lives helps people make meaningful changes to their retirement. And so we work with them when they're in their middle age, when they're still in their full-time jobs and haven't yet faced the big changes that might be going on or might be crossing their minds. So I guess we're working with people at a really exciting time in their stage when they're on the cusp of major life changes as a family unit, maybe even considering moving communities, moving houses. And so we work with planners to help them think about the non-financial aspects of planning for the next chapter after life after full-time work.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, exactly right. So working with planners, so you work on everything that's not the financial side, and the planner works with everything that is the financial side of somebody's, preparing for retirement.
Correct. It's very complementary because you've got to think about all the aspects from a financial aspect when you're planning for retirement, but then from a non-financial lifestyle planning perspective, all that other stuff also takes a very long time to plan and experiment to be ready for.
Exactly. Now, tell us about your background, because you're not from a financial advice background. You're from a human being background. Not that advisors aren't human beings. But let's go back and tell us about your journey into starting this business.
Sure. Look, I've always had a background in product management. I've worked in a whole range of different sectors. And during the time that I was in my last job in financial services, it was around in the payments industry. I was really thinking about what I could do to use my product management skills. And I guess it started off as a personal interest in terms of understanding how do people seamlessly move into retirement and still lead a really meaningful life after full-time work. And so during that time, in my spare time, I ended up interviewing hundreds of people at various different stages of retirement. Some fully into retirement and were leading really fulfilling lives and doing very interesting things with their time. Others were still on the struggle and would share interesting stories of how it was really difficult, it was different from how they expected to have the time and money that they have always thought that they wanted, but then didn't really have much of a sense of meaning and had a bit of a void in their lives. So it was from having those customer interviews that I realized that there was a massive market gap as well as a social gap. No one was actually effectively helping these individuals make that journey from one stage of their lives to the other. So if you look at young people who are coming out of school, going to uni, coming out of uni into the workforce, there's a lot of support for people going through that end of their career. Whereas coming out of a full-time career where you've dedicated your whole life to, there's less support. And the fact that things are changing, tech has extended our lifespan, And there's also issues around ageism. It's a really complex stage in people's lives, and there's no necessarily one way to move into retirement other than maybe doing it slowly and being very careful and trying lots of different things before you end up making any dramatic decisions. So I realized it was a very underserved market. And I was encouraged by a lot of people who were at various different stages of retirement saying, yeah, if you could build a business to help people just like us learn about what the different options are, be inspired by really happy stories of different things that people have done, and give us some guidance around the steps that we should go down so that we can do these things and also help others who are much earlier in the retirement planning path. So from there, that's where Full-Time Lives came about.
Yeah, there's nothing more exciting as an entrepreneur that when you do discover that there is a need and there's a possible solution, and all of a sudden your mind starts going into overdrive to say, right, I think I can solve this problem. We can do this and this and go from there. So it must have been a pretty exciting time. Obviously, having those interviews with all of those people, and that was part of a previous job that you were doing, was it?
I do a lot of customer interviews as a product manager. And even now, you never assume that you know everything about your customer. Even when you've got an established product, service, or business, it's really important to stay connected to what customer needs are, not just from a selling perspective, but in terms of how do you talk to them? What sort of information are they after that you could potentially serve or partner with content providers to offer information that would be useful in guiding them through the difficult stages in their lives or pain points. So, it was from my background as a product manager of really understanding design thinking that I applied to my own business.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so that's prompted you to then create this plan and this product. Well, it's kind of a product, I guess we could call it. And for those that are listening that don't quite understand what we're talking about with product, it's often in a product manager's scenario, it's a tech product or it's a solution-based product or a design thinking-based product where we say, okay, great, how can we solve this problem by using a product? And then you go about to build a product, I guess is the best way to describe a product manager. So as you're going through this process and you've created this idea of, how do we help these people, and you've worked out that there's a huge issue or problem with people that are going through that transition from one full-time career as an employee or as a worker to another full-time career as a retired person or no longer working but still needs to fill their lives with full-time activity. How did you then come up with the key ingredients, if you like, of what that new life might look like, and then set about putting that into a program, if you like?
It was a combination of those insights that I took from the customer interviews. So that's the qualitative research, as well as the quantitative research. So you do that through things like surveys, quizzes, and also desktop research. And also field study. So I have been to a couple of the blue zones. So blue zones are parts of the world where people live long, healthy, happy lives. There's about 7 of these regions around the world. Initially it was 5, and there's subsequently been 2 that have taken the 9 common factors and applied it to their society in order to lift up the happiness and health expectancy levels. So I went and visited 2 of them, including Okinawa in Japan and Loma Linda in California, just to be on the ground, because as much as you can read a lot, what I wanted to do is actually pick up on some insights and observe exactly what it was that made them so happy and lead really meaningful lives. And it was probably a combination of constant ideation and iterations of our program where I brought in a combination of facilitating the content, presenting some of the stories that I've picked up in interviewing lots of people from around the world, that it all came together. I do have a background in running ideation workshops. So that was a skill that became very useful. So, at the beginning of the journey of being, looking to how I'd solve this problem in terms of helping people transition smoothly into retirement, I didn't really know what the solution was going to be. Was it going to be an app? Was it going to be, some kind of product that you buy off the shelf that has content in it, like a book? And where we've landed is actually facilitating conversations. So as much as we have written some workbooks, we have a lot of worksheets, but what I'm realizing is that when people hear other people's stories and they're in that intimate mode of listening to others, as well as having the right questions being posed to them when they're in a really relaxed, creative state, that's when they can have an epiphany around how to reshape what they need to do. So I guess it's been a process of combining my knowledge, professional knowledge, as well as what has resonated with the market and constantly iterating. That's really important, to not necessarily be wedded to what your initial idea around what the solution might look like, but actually put stuff out there, even if it's in small bite sizes, testing each component, refining it until you get the right combination and until you get product market fit.
Yeah, fantastic. Everything you say resonates, and I do like the facilitated conversation idea. Obviously, that's the premise for a lot of podcasts, same sort of conversations, your story and how you went about it. Now, talk to me a bit more about these blue zones, because I'm fascinated with the blue zones and what they're doing in those blue zones that makes everybody so happy.
So probably one of the things that is probably best known about the blue zones is because there's so many blue zone recipe books. So Dan Buettner, who was the one who came up with the term blue zones, and he went on his own study tours a few decades ago to all these different locations to carry out, research, and he brought a whole bunch of different disciplinary leaders. And what they found there were 9 common factors. And so the diet aspect is all about eating a plant-based diet. So that's quite obvious. The other aspect is about moving. So it doesn't necessarily mean going to the gym, but it's having a lifestyle where you're constantly moving about and not necessarily relying on cars. You're not sitting down all the time. You're actually doing things like gardening, and you're walking around your local area. And the other aspect that I've taken a lot of and baked into our content and our programs is the social connection aspect. So that's incredibly important in terms of that engagement and respect that people have, that even when you stop work, you're still very much an important part of the community. So that's probably what's very different, and why the life expectancy is higher in these small pockets compared to the rest of their nations. So the life expectancy in Okinawa is still significantly higher than the rest of Japan. And it's that social engagement and connection, as well as I guess the social structure is very aware that the small groups are important. So in Okinawa, they have a concept called moai. And a moai is a small group of about 5 people who go through life together. And they're not necessarily members of their family. If they were lucky enough to have been allocated to a moai from the time they were a baby, then they will essentially grow up and be a set group of friends of 5 people who go through the ups and downs of life. And I guess the fact that it's formalized says something about the fact that number of 5 very close people in your life who you listen to, who you share your deepest worries with, and they will support you in time, says a lot about something that maybe we can adapt and, adopt and think about in our own lives, in terms of really identifying, well, who do I want to keep in my life as I, move from work into that next chapter? Who do I really want to support and give back to and really value. So that's something that's really made me think a lot about who is important in my life, and equally also thinking about who no longer has a role in your life. And, and because we all have limited hours in the day and you can't be spread so thin. So I've actually, made some decisions along the way and just learning from my observations and spending time in the blue zones in trying to apply a lot of this in my own life in terms of really deprioritizing the things that are no longer valuable or important to me. And that has included a few people that maybe not necessarily made me feel that it was bringing out the best in me.
Yeah, fantastic. So you're using your analysis brain to turn around and go, right, who do I want to have in my very close inner circle that I, want to trust with all my emotions and feelings and those sorts of things, and then who do I want to have in the sort of the second level out and those sort of things. Was there many other levels? Was it a very close group of 5, and then a slightly bigger social community, and then a larger acquaintances community, or was it?
Yeah, definitely. That plays into it in terms of, as you say, the circles of networks. So, so there definitely has been quite a lot of longevity research into even the role that a barista plays in your life. So, those sorts of day-to-day engagements of, whether it's the person at the corner store, the barista, your neighbors, you don't necessarily have to just have those deep relationships, good friends, but those other relationships are also really important. So that's why the 6th and 7th Blue Zone that have essentially reconstructed the Blue Zone into that. So Singapore, for example, there's all kinds of government policy and employer policies for older workers that really encourage a lot of these concepts in terms of living close to your family, as well as being close to others, and encouraging people to walk a lot more and be less sedentary at home. So, and getting people to just be more physical in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could geek out with you all day about this, but we probably should move on to the next part of the conversation. Now, I want to talk about the 5 key ingredient that you've developed, and if we just quickly go for an overview of those, then we might dive into each one. Number 1,
the first one is a sense of purpose, or as the Okinawans call it, ikigai. Yep. And so there's been several books that have come out on the topic of how do you lead a life with purpose, or ikigai.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And number 2?
The second one is community.
Yep, obviously, yes, that we just sort of mentioned upon. And the third area?
Vitality.
Yep, making sure that you're looking after yourself and that you're happy and you get up and you can, as you said, move a lot. And number 4? Lifelong learning. Yep, lifelong learning, and that keeping the mind active. And then, of course, the 5th one is the one where the financial advisor really kicks in. Wealth. So having enough wealth to do all those great things in life. Yeah, fantastic. All right, so let's start with purpose. Let's go a little bit deeper into that and how people can then find their purpose or work out what they are, and sort of, because I guess a lot of people may not be spend time consciously thinking about what their purpose is. Yeah, so we actually have a transition readiness quiz that we offer financial planners to give their clients to fill out. And consistently, what we find is the area of the 5 key ingredients people struggle with, this whole idea of having a sense of purpose. What is it, and what does it mean to them as well? Because it means different things to different people. But I guess how I can easily break it down would be it's a combination of activities, or one activity or even job or project that brings together your strength, your passion, and also what does the world value in you and what does the world need. So those external factors are incredibly important when we're thinking about a meaningful lifestyle, because it's not just what you want to do and what you're passionate about. That's part of it. The other big component is also thinking about where is the world going?
So that's something that's you've got to, and that's where research and also just exploring what your options are really important. Because if the world's changed, then you've got to figure out where is your place in that changing world to stay relevant.
Yeah. Now, if we go a bit deeper into this, I really like the idea that your purpose is something that will maybe never be achieved. It's like it's so great that you are not going to tick that box anytime, but you're working towards it, or you're moving something in a better way towards it, and I guess there's a lot of this purpose conversation is where a lot of beliefs in the past might have been, whether it's religious beliefs or whether it's beliefs about other things. The greater good, if you like.
And I think the Japanese word ikigai translates to getting out of bed. What gets you out of bed every day? So that simplifies it. So when you start to think, oh yeah, what does excite me and want me to get my day started? That's a very simple way to really think about what or who makes me feel that way.
Yeah, and when I distill this down into actually, thinking about how you might consider your own, purpose and passions, it's kind of like describe the best activities during the day that you've ever done or had, or what were the best meetings you've had, and then what was it about those things that made you really enjoy them?
Yeah, exactly. The other way that we help people think about it is we have an innovation canvas, which I'll give you the link to so they can download it. And it just asks them a bunch of different questions about the activities they're doing in their lives, as well as their mindset, as well as how does the world see them and value them. And the question that people get most stuck on, I'd say, would be the question around, we put it towards the end intentionally, and that question is, what do people value in you?
Yeah,
and that's quite important, because obviously it's that feedback mechanism that you get from people, and that's what I see in the Blue Zones, that people are generally really happy and integrated. They're part of a group. That sense of belonging is just so important.
Yeah, so in a way, it feels to me that it's about what do you give before what you receive in that zone. Like how can I be here to give something, and then something comes back to me. I don't know what it's going to be or how it's going to work, but it might be the more you give, the more you receive. Is that the same concept?
Absolutely, and just that concept of giving, and I guess one of the things that comes up when we talk about what gives you a sense of purpose is actually getting people to think about, well, what gives you that sense of purpose and who can you give it to? And be really specific. And often in our workshops, people end up landing on the idea that I'm going to research what sort of skilled volunteering I can do. They may not have ever done it before because they've been too busy in their careers. They might have done a little bit of mentoring. They might have done a little bit of non-skilled volunteering, like working in a soup kitchen on the odd day. But in terms of really thinking long and hard about what skills and what are they passionate about, like what sort of causes or people they'd like to serve, that really makes them think about, there's definitely places and people who I can give my time and effort and knowledge to. How can I do that so that it's fulfilling and people can benefit from my legacy?
Yeah, skilled volunteering. That's a really great way. That's a really nice way of putting it. Now, I also think that just on this topic, that giving as part of a community is where it's all at. Like if you're part of a community that's an association or the XY advisor community, for example, you get the most out of that skilled volunteering, that actually putting something into it, and then people react to that and give stuff back. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, people often say that they get more out of volunteering than anything else. It just far outweighs what they're giving.
Yeah, fantastic. And we'll definitely put a link to that innovation canvas in there as well to for people to be able to refer to something. Now, that sort of brings us to the second point, which is community. And we did touch on this a little bit, but let's go a little bit deeper into that community and how advisors can work with clients to help their clients find this community.
Look, it's really, really just posing the question and getting them to think about what community do you live in, whether it's a virtual community or where do you live, who is your tribe. And you can belong to a number of different communities, but I guess this becomes important in the advisor or planner's conversations with their clients when conversations around right sizing comes up. So where it typically comes up in conversations is when people think about where they might want to buy a second home, like a beach house or country house, with the intention of potentially retiring there. So I guess when I have had numerous conversations with people in the full-time lives community as well as interviewees, some of the negative stories that came out in terms of making a decision too quickly around moving to a different community was if they didn't actually just think about the practical aspects of the home, like, the number of bedrooms, the price of the home, and, what sort of lifestyle, like, is it beachy or kind of country? Those are things that you can think about and research quite easily. But a lot of people who I've spoken to who did struggle and ended up, regretting the decisions they made is when they actually made the major move and maybe, sold their home in the capital city and did do the right sizing exercise and realizing that sense of loneliness because family and friends weren't around them. People said they might go and visit them, but it wasn't that frequent because it was too far away, or they didn't integrate very well with the community that they'd moved to. So that's something that people need to be aware of when they're considering those sorts of big decisions around where are they going to move to next. It's really important to have established a really strong community bond and relationship, and even doing some volunteering to start with to get to know the locals, to build up some friendships, to see if that's exactly the type of people you want to spend the rest of your life with.
Yeah, it's a really interesting.
It's a lot harder to step back from that.
It's a very interesting transition conversation, isn't it? Because it does take time to build those communities and to build those relationships inside a community. And yeah, you're right. If you do move away, move to the seascape or move away to this place where you're going to theoretically retire to, then yeah, it's like starting again with your friendship groups.
Absolutely. And that's really difficult for some people. So, but then for others who've already, that's always been where they've spent a lot of time with and have a lot of friends there and have activities already established, then that's a really smooth transition. So I guess in the conversations that advisors might be having with their clients who might be making those sorts of decisions, it is good for them to ask those questions. Do you have an established community already in that place that you're going to move to?
Yeah, and I guess a lot of the time, the financial decisions, which we'll get to, obviously, are about about these ideas. Oh, yeah, we're going to buy something and move to the beach, and that's going to be our retirement plan. But then I guess the like you said, having some seriously good questions in your arsenal to talk to those clients about at that moment to dig a little bit deeper.
Absolutely.
Now, the third area of this is the vitality, and we sort of mentioned the moving a little bit more, but talk to us about this. It's obviously fairly important. It's one of the key ingredients.
Yeah, so it's a combination of diet and moving in your lifestyle and not being sedentary. But the other aspect to touch on is spirituality. So it is a question that we ask people in the transition quiz. Do you have any form of spirituality? And it's quite varied in Australia. So my observation is that spirituality can mean different things in any of those blue zones. So Okinawa, they don't necessarily have the same religion as the rest of Japan. They believe in the spirits being in nature. So therefore their relationship with nature is very different in terms of that great respect and really being very aware of nature and the fact that it can change and flowing with it. Also in Loma Linda, so their form of spirituality is the fact that it's a 7-day Adventist town. So there's about 30 churches in that town, and it's quite a small town. Like it's, got about 30,000 people who live there. So high density of churches. And their lifestyle is very much around having a day of rest on Saturday. So therefore their weekend starts on Friday. So when I visited and I arrived on a Friday afternoon, nothing was open, like no restaurants or shops. And even the burger shops were all plant-based burger shops. So that's where, where the religion really plays a part in what people eat and what they do when they have downtime. They'll spend time connecting with people in the community, as well as going hiking in the mountains nearby. So, so I guess that concept of vitality is mental, it's physical, it's spiritual, and it's also social.
Yeah, exactly. Which is all part of the community. Now, I just want to touch on this spirituality part. Both those communities you mentioned they had the same spirituality, right? So it's I believe the same thing and you believe, and therefore we're both on the same page. Does that have something to do with it? Like, could it work if there were different spiritualities within the group?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I never really thought about that. It may well be that that's why there is social cohesion. Yeah, you're right. And that has been raised as would the Blue Zones work in Australia, because it's such a diverse country of people with very different backgrounds. I personally believe that acceptance of differences and, being able to fit into and live with lots of different other people could be one thread that would bring us all together. And even just back to the point about intergenerational communities and workforces, that acceptance of people who are different to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would probably have to be the key, because you wouldn't want it to be part of something that, caused friction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, do they also talk about the concept of with vitality? Because obviously sleep's a big part of that, the regeneration and those sorts of things. Is that also part of it?
I don't know. It makes sense. They haven't really analysed it to that level. Yep. But my research into some of the, the common factors of what makes a long, healthy life, sleep is definitely a really important aspect.
Yep, fantastic. Now, we mentioned the physically and mentally being a big part of it. So, just on the mental side, probably leads us into the fourth section, which is lifelong learning and creating that idea of continually taking on knowledge and then continually also passing on that knowledge, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that quest for knowledge is incredibly important and it ties back to that ikigai of really trying to stay relevant and knowing what's going on in the world around you. So not being completely immersed in just the things that you want to do, that you're passionate about and things that you love doing, but linking it back to the rest of the world and being very aware of what's going on and improving yourself. So, so that's something that we've found is an important trait in terms of that sense of curiosity and doing something about it.
Curiosity, I love that. So this I guess this works from two angles. One is the emotional side of knowing something new and feeling proud about what you've achieved and being able to have conversations about those new things, but also from a neurological pathway. I guess it's creating new neurological pathways, new neurons, and that's also a lot to do with the life expectancy of when your brain is going, you know what, we're still growing, we're still doing stuff. We're not on a downward slope, we're on an upward slope.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other aspect why we thought it was a really important ingredient to have is that when you look at the new 100-year life model, so that's a new model that replaces the traditional model of work, study, work, and retirement being the three major acts of your life. Now that we're living longer and therefore effectively working for more than 50 years, how do you rejuvenate, retrain in between career breaks? So during your career breaks, in order to sustain your energy and to keep going with your work, the concept of pausing to take stock and just reflect on, well, where am I going and where do I actually want to keep going for the next 5 or 6 years from a work perspective, whether it's unpaid or paid work. That retraining and lifelong learning aspect is an incredibly important if you want to sustain employment or even kind of come in and out of paid employment, to have that flexibility so that you can always, keep earning a gainful employment.
Yep.
So there's that financial aspect as well in terms of being able to earn enough to keep going, but then learning about things that can build on your experience and skills and capability that the world actually values and will pay for.
Yeah, fair enough. Now that sort of brings us to the fifth key ingredient, which is wealth. Probably don't need to spend too much time on this one because this is where the financial planners come in.
Yeah. And I guess where we landed in terms of partnering with financial planners was the fact that people initially consider, how much money do I need to retire? That's often one of the first questions that will prompt people to go and find a financial planner if they never had one before. And so it's also, if those planners have been supporting middle-aged people, at some point those conversations will come up, and that's where Full-Time Lives can come in and jointly have those conversations from a non-financial aspect, because it goes hand in hand, and it makes those conversations much more meaningful for the financial planner, where they ask them, well, what are your retirement goals? What sort of outcomes are you seeking to get? And, what sort of wealth strategy do we need to create for you? If the person has actually got a really good idea, not just at a really high level perspective, but actually have tried a lot of the things that they say they want to do, then it's more likely to actually happen, and they're more likely to do something that's not going to be risky because they have never done that before. It's not a radical different change for them.
Yep. So how do you, like, Full-Time Lives works with planners? We sort of talked about, this is the sort of the content that you mostly go through, but from a practical point of view, is it sort of workshops that you run, peer groups? Talk us through that, exactly how that works from the client's point of view.
So we offer a number of different resources and tools as well as programs. So depending on how the planner would like to engage with us in order to meet the information needs of their pre-retiree clients. And often it's a combination of all those different ways. So we're the ones who will provide the non-financial aspects of retirement in terms of regular newsletter content, the quizzes, and attaching templates for those clients to fill out relating to certain themes. We also have a starter kit that the planners can give their clients, and it basically is a set of really colourful cards that helps them brainstorm what sort of activities they could be doing one step at a time that would be something new and different they can do as they transition from full-time work. And then we also do a 4-module transition program that increasingly we're doing over Zoom. So a
4-module transition program, that is, now that you've worked out all these things, then what do you need to do about it? Is it?
It actually takes people through all of the content that we've been talking about today in a workshop forum. So people have the opportunity to go through more of a structured approach in applying this content we've talked about today, through thinking about the world around them, how that's changing, then ideating on what they can do. So, like, say, for example, thinking about Ikigai, what does that mean to them? And then breaking that down to a 90-day plan. So the first step they need to take is like run a 1-week experiment. So between weeks 3 to 4 of the program, they need to have taken one aspect of their 90-day plan, done an experiment, and then report back to the rest of the group, how did they go in the last week? Just as a way to show themselves that you can actually get going no matter how far off from retirement you are, to actually start to think about, well, what do I need to do if I do a little bit each week? And teaching them an experimental approach, that you haven't failed just because you tried something and it didn't quite work out the way you expected. And that's why the group discussions are really important because everyone gets to hear different people's experiences. Like some people will find that they were so busy that they didn't even get to do their 1 week experiment. That says a lot about them and that they're overcommitted. And, realizing you got to lose something, you got to prune something from your life in order to grow. Other people were really excited that they just got started. So, that a lot of the value that we deliver is actually just helping people take that first step. Because once people are on their way, then it's a lot easier to go, oh, right, did that worked out really well. I'll do more of that and just keep going. And for others, it's, oh, tried that, didn't like it. I'll pivot to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the perfect age group for people that the workshops that you're working with?
It's less about age and probably more about what's happening in their lives, whether there's major changes happening at the work in terms of how they're looking at work. And also the other aspect would be their family unit. So if they've got children who are leaving school or maybe they're about to become an empty nester, it's often the mothers who are more aware of the stage that's about to happen. So she's been thinking more about that change and what she wants to do work-wise and, in terms of how she's going to fill her time. That's a big generalization, but what we do find that there are definitely gender differences.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So, but in that pre-retirement space, I guess, is the people coming up.
So anyone from late 40s up.
Yeah,
and ideally, they've still got quite a few years off from retirement. Because if they've come to us just as they're retiring, it's almost too late to have explored lots of different options.
Yep. And so if a planner was to organise I'm going to put you on the spot here. If a planner was to organise a workshop, how much approximately would they be paying for each of the clients?
About $300 per head.
Okay, for a 4-week program.
Correct.
Okay, that sounds right. And so your business works with planners. What's the sort of things that it's been doing in the past that's changing in the future? Have you worked out what you might be doing as changes come along?
I think COVID has definitely shifted the way people engage with others using digital. A lot of opportunities have opened up for us in terms of working on a global scale, just because the target market have previously said, oh, there's no way we would, and this is the individuals, people who are actually approaching retirement who had previously said, the workshop is so great, it's so immersive, I would never do this online. But I've since gone back to people who've done our face-to-face workshops and asked them, well, over the last year during COVID-19, have you been on any Zoom webinars? Have you done any workshops? And they've all said yes. So that's changed the way that we can deliver our content so that it's a lot more scalable.
I've always found it interesting too that if you approach somebody and say, this is how we deliver it, and they've never been through the face-to-face workshops, then they don't feel like they're missing out. They just feel like this is the way it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key is actually the group discussions and pairing up, which you can still do over Zoom with breakout rooms.
Yep. So why financial advisors? Why was that something that you decided would be a good option for your business? Could you not take this to groups or communities or employers?
We explored a lot of different potential partners in the early days, and we did look at working with large employers. I spoke to 3 of the big 4 banks, spoke to super funds, life insurance companies, spoke to community groups. And what I realized that from the individual's point of view, unless their mindset is actually ready to make change in their lives, and it's unless they've actually indicated that they're asking that big initial trigger question, do I have enough super in order to retire? Unless they're actually thinking that far ahead and being ready for it financially, they're not always ready to make those other changes in their lives. So I guess it's time and place, and also whether those people are really ready to make change to their lifestyle today for their future selves. And so there's a combination of the individual being ready and to have those sorts of conversations and really put the work into planning their other aspects to lead a meaningful, healthy, connected lifestyle. And then there's also the buyer aspect. So in terms of who's willing to work with us and acknowledge that these individuals are going through major changes, major challenges, and who plays a role in supporting them and offering them content and the services and programs to help people through that quite difficult stage in life. And I have found that employers aren't necessarily open to that at this point in time. In terms of those diversity groups in their workforce, there's other groups that they'd prioritize a lot higher. And it might be more vulnerable or disadvantaged groups within their workforce that they're more likely to support. And older workers aren't necessarily a specific group that are seen as being vulnerable or disadvantaged. And I see that as a bit of a problem with 6 generations in the workforce, and some people having a lot to give in terms of that corporate IP knowledge, that ability to mentor younger staff, and all that knowledge and experience disappears once that person leaves the company. So it's a wasted opportunity, but slowly but surely, I think the larger companies will probably shift and in order to stay competitive as an employer, will probably follow the model of smaller companies that are doing really great things to support older workers.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out, because you're right. There is a bit of that ageism in the workplace in a lot of ways, and I always come back down to. I keep coming back down to your sort of 5 key ingredients, having passion and purpose and about something in the community and vitality and all in the workforce. You could just overlay those 5 things in the workforce or as part of a business, and then that brings somebody's longevity in their business or in their working life into it as well. So it's not just about retirement. You could apply the same things in a workforce.
Absolutely. And you could argue that the 5 key ingredients are important for anyone at any stage of their lives.
Yeah, fantastic. So, well, thank you so much. As an entrepreneur, I've loved the way that you've gone about structuring your business or building your business off the back of some really great research and some really good understanding of what the problem was and the demographic and understanding how you can make some real change in people's lives and help them out. So thank you for coming on and having a chat to us. If planners want to get hold of you, what's the best way they can find you?
Best way to reach us is at fulltimelives.com. And also we have a white paper for financial planners for them to get some tips on how they can support their clients through a 100-year life. So I'll give you the link to put in your show notes.
Yes, fantastic. Thank you, Natalie. Really appreciate your time and energy and what you've done for our community.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you have it, another episode of the XY Advisor podcast. And it's now time for amazing part of the week for Em and I to do some shout outs. G'day, Em.
Hey, Fraser. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Who are we giving a shout out to today?
Today, I want to give a big shout out to Michael Laws from Affinia Advisors. Has kicked off a space specifically for advisors in the Affinia license on XY as a way for their advisors to connect, collaborate, share ideas, ask questions, and really improve just in how they're running their businesses, delivering advice, all sorts of things. Some awesome conversations in there already, and we're really excited to support these guys and help them create a really great, valuable, thriving space for their current and future Affinia advisors.